My name is Leo Hollis. I'm a historian and an urbanist, and I'm the author of Cities Are Good For You. I've always lived in cities, and I've always loved them, and I've always found the reaction to cities from other people strange and bemusing. So I wanted to create an argument to show actually what I felt the benefits of living in the city were. And this is a fantastic moment in which to tell this story. We've obviously been living and building cities for something like 7,000 years, but now the 21st century really is the age of the city. So I wanted to look at how we got here, but also looking at the really key areas which are going to transform the places where we live, because this is an opportunity. You know, we are living in a moment when, as we become increasingly more urban, we need to make the right decisions, because the city can be both the arc, but also can be the tragedy of our future. What's fascinating about cities as a whole is, in some ways, how similar they are, how they work in similar ways, particularly as they get larger and larger and larger. Every city has its own personality, absolutely, and you have to look at it on the ground. But the city as an idea and what happens in these places, what happens just on an ordinary street, I think is fairly universal. I think there is a very interesting debate going on about mobility and about how people move around cities. As cities grow larger and larger and larger, we need to find new ways of getting around them. So much of the 20th century city was built around the car. But we're getting some really, really interesting innovations from unexpected places, from some South America, from India, from France, so the non-canonical kind of sort of cities, of ways of dealing and rethinking about the city in terms of mobility. So looking at things as almost as banal as bus systems is transforming a city like Bogota in Colombia, or looking at the way that getting people to leave their cars at home and walk. How do you create a space or a city which encourages people to walk? Because that has huge benefits, not just obviously to do with air pollution and air quality, but also in terms of fitness of the people. And as a result, people behave differently as they encounter each other on the streets. The thing that I'm particularly fascinated about in cities is not necessarily the fabric of the building. I'm not obsessed with architecture and the built environment. I'm interested in what goes on between the buildings. So the social lives that we create out of the spaces between that fabric. Because if you take everyone out of the city, you don't have anything. You have a ruin. But you can have a city without the buildings, and it's the social urbanism that I'm fascinated by. Obviously, technology is a huge part of the city throughout its history. If you imagine the impact that the lift had on the 19th century city, or electricity had, these things come into our lives and utterly transform them. The thing that is transforming the current city is mobile computing and connectivity. This is obviously a huge advantage to the way that we negotiate the city. But it also brings with it a huge warning. I'm very worried about the impact that mobile technology, surveillance, and the smart city and the Internet of Things will have on our current understanding of what the city spaces are for. You know, the technology is moving so fast that we don't really understand it. It is also estimated that the Internet of Things is going to be worth £17 trillion in the next 30 years, and that is obviously driving this sort of introduction of technology in the cities. So we're not necessarily asking what we need,